This Talking Flutes podcast is kindly sponsored by Trevor James Flutes, making life sound beautiful. You can show them some flute love by following them on Instagram at TJ Flutes, Trevor James Flutes on Facebook, and at trevorjamesflutes.com.
Hello, I'm Clare Southworth, and this is Talking Flutes Revisited. And today we're revisiting number 63, so very early days of our Talking Flutes podcast. And it was about how do you build your brand? What have you got that makes you really stand out, and how do you want people to view you? Do you know what you do best and what you don't do best? And how do you promote yourself? So here I am with my duo partner, John Paul Wright, discussing all things to do with building your own brand. I hope you enjoy it. Lovely, lovely. We're very, very lucky. So today...
Yeah, fire away.
I thought we'd talk about building the brand.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Sorry, I've got a coffee in front of me, Claire. Sorry. I was just about to take a slurp.
So building the brand. So I'm thinking about what is a brand?
Yep.
So it is a concept that can be distinguished from other products.
Yes.
So music, your brand, is how you would like your audience to see you. And I'd like us to talk about how we build our brand from your perspective in sales and marketing, and my perspective in performing, teaching and writing.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
There must be a correlation on the way. I'm trying to think of... You've caught me with this subject because I thought we were coming down to talk about questions. Building a brand, yeah. So I can... How do you want to play it? Because I can start from when I joined,
Yeah.
and then I can... Or do we discuss the correlations between branding to start with, and then see where the subject takes us?
Yeah, I think we've just got to get started and see where it takes us. I want to talk about how we, in building our brands from each of our different perspectives, how we preserve our integrity, how we stay being honest and having strong moral values, how we promote, what should we promote, what are the pitfalls, and how do we become successful.
Crikey, it's going to be a long podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's quite interesting when you start to delve into this, which I have been doing over the last day or two. What about... Let's start with our target audience. Let's start with our target audience from your perspective in terms of sales.
Okay, before I do so, can I just throw something in? It's just come into my head to do with Instagram, because a lot of our audience will be on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I think the correlation straight between my side, which is very much business perspective, and your side, which is building musicians and building the brand as an artist, the one thing we do have in common is the ability to communicate, because without that communication, you can't build a brand. Now, on Instagram, about 9 months ago, my wife Jane pointed out that there was this lady on there called Mrs. Hinch. Now, Mrs. Hinch had just set up an Instagram page, and it's her cleaning her bathroom, cleaning her bath, cleaning her toilet, and just cleaning. And she had this adorable dog. And the dog sleeps in its own bed, upside down. So it's belly facing upwards. And within 6 months, Mrs. Hinch and she just did loads of daily updates, probably about 30 or 40 stories about her cleaning and what brush she had found and how she uses vinegar a lot. And within 6 months, she had over 1 million followers. And now, I don't know when this podcast is going to go out, probably in a couple of weeks' time. She's got well over 2 million. Procter & Gamble have made products with Mrs. Hinch's name on it, and she's got a book, and she calls all her followers the Hinchers.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, and do you know why? Because I'm sure she didn't set this up to build a brand, because she's just a normal run-of-the-mill lady. Just got married. In fact, she's just about to have a baby, and just set it up because she loved cleaning. But something happened with what she did that resonated. And she has this way of communicating. Mm. So I think if we're looking at building a brand, should we look at, as you say, what resonates and what communicates?
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
because she was perfect for us. So if I look at some most important parts, really, is the integrity, is that maintaining integrity from day one, but also knowing your target audience. And in the music world, obviously you're going to speak about the musician world. In the music world, there are lots and lots of brands, all vying for the same attention. Some very, very big companies, some small. And the key is to actually know who you're aiming at and then finding out what it is that resonates with that audience and being genuine. And that's the key. You have to be very, very genuine.
Absolutely.
Because you can market yourself to the nth degree, but ultimately, when the musician picks up your product, if it doesn't say what it says on the tin, you've lost them. Not only lost them there, you've lost them forever. So the integrity of message, but also the integrity of communication directly to the audience, but also making sure that the product is what you say. And I would imagine that's probably similar for a musician.
I think it's exactly the same, and I think it's so important from the performer's perspective that you research your target audience and also research your competitors. So if I'm thinking about target audience as a performer, your audience can range from a children's concert to an informal lunchtime concert where the audience are eating lunch, to a formal setting in a recital hall. Your competitors, you have to look and see if they're doing the same as you and what can you do differently, and picking your unique selling points in terms of ability and personality. And what makes you unique? Is it because of your communication? So are you getting reputation because in your concerts you always are chatting to your audiences? So you're developing a line of communication with them so they feel they get to know you a little bit. Are you using audience participation? Are you using a good variety in terms of program planning or interesting combinations of instruments? So there are many different ways where we have to think about who is your target audience and how you're going to connect with those people.
Do you have to ask some very honest questions of yourself? Bearing in mind, if we're talking to flute players here or musicians in general, there's a lot of us.
An awful lot of us. And you need that unique selling point.
Because bearing in mind, we can't all be Burikoff, Andres Adorian, Jimmy Galway, Pahud. We can't all be them. So
no, but then you're talking about the absolute pinnacles of our profession. If we can start by looking a little bit lower to find a unique selling point. So if you're looking at James Galway, it was the man with the golden flute, but before then it was the man with the Irishman with the beard and the twinkly eyes and the fantastic sound.
Yeah.
So it could be, if you look at yourself, try and think about what can you promote that makes you stand out from somebody else. So it could be that you promote your communication skills. The fact that, so for example, I like to talk to an audience, and not many of my peers do.
So you give narrative on each of the places.
Yes.
Sorry, pieces?
Pieces.
Yeah.
So that when you walk on stage, you're there as, if you like, as an entertainer, and your audience have paid money to come and be entertained, and to hopefully get to know you as a human being, not just some figure on stage that just comes on, tunes up and plays. I mean, okay, you might have program notes, but it's really good to actually chat and to make a connection with that audience. And I remember many, many years ago when I first started out, I was in playing in a music club in Yorkshire, and I'd done the concert. It was a flute and piano recital. I talked all the way through it. The chairman of the music club said to me afterwards, that really enjoyed the concert. It was lovely how you introduced everything, and we learned a lot. And then he said, we had such and such a string quartet last month. They didn't talk. They won't be coming again. And I was wondering where his conversation was going to at the start, because I thought he was going to tell me that, I talk too much. But no, it was the opposite. And so from from that moment, I always made a point of trying to create more interest in the programme. And it's not, people don't want to hear facts, this composer born here, died here, wrote this. They want to know that maybe the piece was written when they were on holiday in Venice, and you can imagine yourself sitting in the square in Venice and,
so you take them a little visual journey before you perform.
Create imagery. Yeah, it's really important. And if I didn't have the knowledge about a particular piece, because you can't always find out about the pieces. And certainly in my early days, we didn't have computers and internet, and you couldn't Google. So if you couldn't find it in the library, you had to make it up. So then you make up stories and create images, which people then can relate to. And it's especially good with complex pieces that you create program music that the audience can relate to and enjoy the piece because of the image you've helped create in their heads.
That word relate keeps coming over to me.
Yep.
The relation between you and the audience, but also the audience and the piece.
When the concert's finished, your audience have an image of you. So the image is not just something they look at, it's something that they can take away. So it's an oral image as much as a visual image.
So when they know you're coming back again, they will know what they're going to get.
Hopefully in your review reflects how you've tried to create your image. And you want good criticism, you want constructive criticism, so that you can build on that. Because this is all about building the brand. The brand doesn't come overnight. The building the brand comes after years and years and years.
Absolutely.
And you have to actually sit down and think about how do you want people to see you. So there are many other things that you can think about. You've got to decide on your image, your look. How do you present yourself? How do you want that audience to view you? How do you communicate that image? Know what you do best and know what you don't do best.
That's important. Know what you don't do best.
Don't do best. So do you love performing or teaching or writing? Do you like live concerts, recordings, lectures? Do you want to go to schools, colleges, universities? Do you not want to do any of those things? So it could be building the brand is as a private teacher, so that you're trying to think about how your students view you, how maybe if it's younger students, how their parents view you. So you build up your reputation, your image, your brand.
How about the visual flyers, the visual image that you create of you, which you pass around to potential employees?
Yeah, well...
Sorry, employers.
I think you have a great responsibility in how you promote yourself visually.
Yeah.
So in my position, maybe as professor of flute, I have to take great care over what I put out, especially on social media, and what photos I use, because I have to be responsible in order to be taken seriously.
Credibility comes in there, doesn't it?
Credibility. How you frame photographs and how you describe them, and what are you saying about yourself through that photograph. So you have to be careful not to blur the edges.
That's quite hard in social media, isn't there? Because there is obviously the musician as a musician and the musician as a person.
Yes.
So that blurring it's quite dangerous for a reputation, really, isn't it?
So you have to really think about what you post, but maybe also when you post. So, you've been out for a night and you've been drinking and it's, 2 a.m. It's not a good time then to post because they're there forever, it seems. So you've got to be so careful about how you create your image so that people can't go and look at the social media and think, well, I don't think I want them to come and do a concert or teach my children or come to my school.
That's exactly a good point. That's what people don't realise, is that potential employers, whether you're a brand and you're taking somebody on as an employee or potential concert venues, will go back through your social media pages to get an idea of who you are.
Now, you're very good at this because that's your job. I'm useless at it and I'm trying to learn because I said when I started out, we didn't have this. So my brand when I was coming out of college, and just having left, was all to do with getting a brochure and making sure you had the right photographs and the right information. And then you sent the brochure out to hundreds and hundreds of promoters and agents, and you had to make sure that the information that you had down there would attract them, and they would contact you and book you.
That's fine, but ultimately, if you can't produce the goods, then you won't get rebooked.
No. So this is again, you've got to be very careful about the integrity behind what you promote. If you're promoting the fact that you are an international performer, credible standard, and wow your audiences, and you really sort of dress up what you do, if you can't back it up, you're going to be in trouble.
And that's where the correlation with actual business is as well. Because when I started, 26 years ago, the brief was to take a brand the Trevor James Flute brand that was quite fledgling, and to drive it forward in the face of very strong competition from Japan and America. My view has always been that you can't pull the wool over musicians' eyes. In other words, you can promise the world, but when they put that instrument to their mouth and they blow, they feel, they hear, and they see the reaction from others. So for me, integrity has always been the number one base mark or line that you have to always maintain, so you can't cross either side of that. That leads to its own issues, is that if you want integrity, you really have to know your audience and your product. And the audience is always changing. The styles and the tastes of the players and the desires of the teachers as into what sound they want is changing. And as a brand, you have to change with them. But instead of trying to dictate change, as a lot of music companies do, oh, look at this new flute. It does this, it does this, it does this, because we're telling you it does this. What I wanted to do was to follow people. In other words, have the brand develop based around the desires and needs of musicians.
Yeah, you've actually talked about a very important thing here, which is creating an emotional link.
Yes, absolutely.
It's the emotional link, and it's not enough to say what you do, but why you do it.
Yes.
And that creates an emotional link, and that is in both our areas of the music business. For me, when I was saying doing a brochure or a website, that I'm saying what I do, but why I do it, so that anyone reading it is linked emotionally to that. They know what I feel about it. And the same thing with you, that when people try your instruments, that immediately brings the emotional link, how they feel.
Yeah, because for me, music is not just, it's all about emotion, because you have to feel something, you have to love something, you have to love that flute like you've loved nothing else.
Yeah, you love it so you can't put it down.
No.
And that's when you know you have the right instrument.
Yeah, but the thing is, the manufacturer can't determine that.
No.
Because the manufacturer has to be open to the desires and understanding what players need. And it's changed so much. And we've had to listen, we've had to develop. If I take a step back about the emotional link, the first thing I did when I joined is I created a picture. And I don't know why I created the picture at the time, because in those days, posters were Yamaha pictures of musicians holding the flute.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do something very different. I didn't know if it would work. But I came up with an idea of having a little girl standing on tiptoes. So she had a music stand, and on it was the old Tune a Day. So she was obviously a beginner, and she was in a ballet outfit. She had taken her shoes off, so she's standing on tiptoes, looking on her teacher's stand. And I think on there might have been the eBay or something, and the teacher's flute was on a peg. And it was in this rather grand room, and the poster was just entitled "Aspiring to Greater Heights." So that was the brand wanting to aspire to being greater than what we were in those days, but also the young girl wanting to aspire to be greater than the Tune a Day she had started on. And within 15 years, we'd printed over 250,000 posters.
Yeah, I remember it very well. It's a great picture.
Yeah,
lovely image.
Yeah, but it wasn't set up with a plan of, right, how can we get to the hearts of flute players? It was just an idea that came into the head that resonated. And I think resonation Is there such a word as resonation?
I don't know.
Well, if there isn't, I've just
Let's
made
use
it up.
it.
Resonation, when it comes to building a brand, is the key. As you've already touched it with musicians, you've got to resonate with your audience, resonate with the people who are booking you, with agents, and resonate with any publicity material you put out on social media. For us, it's all about testing. Any one time, we must have 20 or 30 instruments out around the world being tested, being fed back. But a lot of companies do that. But what makes us different is we actually listen and we make changes. We're small enough as a company to actually make changes. Because if you don't make changes, then that actually backfires. So as a musician, I think if you have a bad performance, you take that information and then you just build on that, and the next one just covers on that one.
Absolutely. And the same with reviews or comments from your peers. If you ask advice and you take on board what people say, and you're constantly trying to develop, improve, build.
Yeah. So we go back to basics in that everything we do, we know there'll be some of our target audience that love it and some that don't, but respect for everybody.
Also, I like the fact that you say try everything. I mean, I always used to say if students were looking to buy a new instrument, I mean, the first thing they do is they look and see what you're playing.
Absolutely. Can I just cut in there? That's the key, in that we have lots of artists around the world, mostly playing on our alto flutes, because our segment is from probably 8-year-olds, starters, up to 18, 19-year-olds. And then after that, they go on to the Japanese brands or the high American brands. So we are like, if Yamaha are Ford, we are, trying to think what we are. If Yamaha are Ford, we are quickly come up with a brand. Think of a car.
Think of a car. I don't know anything about cars.
I'd say Audi. Okay, say Audi. I think that's a bit posh, but anyway, so we're an Audi. And then when flute players get to a certain level, they want to drive a BMW or they want to drive a Rolls Royce or an Aston Martin. We're not in that category, so we know where we sit. The category we are in, where a lot of professional players play, is on our alto flutes.
Yeah.
So when professional players are out with our alto flutes, I don't believe that there should be a big banner behind them saying Trevor James Flutes. Because for me as an audience, I don't want to be sold. I want to be sold on the player. It's all about the musician, not about the brand. Where it becomes important and where the brand wins is, you've just touched on that, when someone comes over and looks at what flute you're playing, that's when you have them. So it's not all the banners, it's not all the posters, it's when they look down at that flute and they think, Trevor James.
Yeah.
Or in your case, Miyazawa, platinum. That's where you get the credibility, because the performer has used that instrument. But it's not the instrument that's actually playing, it's the performer.
I'm just thinking that when I'm saying to my students, you try every flute, that is a far stronger message than if you say, well, I play Miyazawa, you should go and buy Miyazawa. Okay, so let's move into a little bit into sponsorship.
Okay.
Okay, because if you're supporting a brand, you need to keep your integrity.
Yes.
So, and you're saying that you're quite happy with someone to have a different head joint, although the integrity comes from playing the instrument.
It does.
So, okay, so you've got part of the instrument, maybe not the total instrument. I'm thinking about other people in other sort of other areas, like Lewis Hamilton. Mm-hmm. So he is sponsored by Mercedes and drives a Mercedes.
Yeah.
He doesn't drive a Ferrari. And George Clooney, he supports Nespresso. I wonder if he's got an espresso machine at home or has he got a Gadget. Tiger Woods, there has to be a golf one, doesn't there?
Yeah.
He wears Rolex watches, not Omega.
Right. This is where integrity is very important, because these people are paid vast sums. In the music business, you're not paid vast sums.
Certainly not.
So your integrity comes with playing an instrument and being allowed to play an instrument that works for you. If it's the whole flute, fantastic. But for us personally, we understand that a musician has to have integrity with themselves, and to play a complete flute, everything must work for them.
I'm just picking up from what you just said. Yes, in the music world, so we don't have huge sponsorships.
No.
They don't exist. But if you are helped by a flute company or a local music shop or a local photographer, then I think it's very important that you mention.
Absolutely.
And that you give credit to those small amounts of sponsorship, bits of help that you get, rather than just ignore it.
There's also an obligation.
There is an obligation.
There's an obligation on every musician. If they are supported by, there is an obligation to inform the audience, because in being associated with the brand, there must be some form of support. And if you're associated with the brand, in effect, you are selling that brand. You're promoting it. So that's why there is a moral duty on every musician.
Yeah, from both sides. It's got to be from both sides.
Absolutely.
It? And so you'll be very careful from performer's point of view that you don't upset those people who might be helping you climb the ladder and get on with your career.
Yeah. And from a manufacturing and branding perspective, there's also has been understanding that musicians sometimes will go and pick up another flute and go, wow. And it's your obligation to say, well, why are they saying wow? Have a look at it. And is there something you can learn from that wow? But also don't be upset if a musician suddenly decides, actually, I really like that. You're not buying a fridge, are you? You're buying an emotion. You're not buying an espresso machine or an oven. You're buying something that's very unique.
Yeah. So which you are being emotional.
Yes.
So we're back to that emotional connection. I mean, you're using your instrument to communicate a story, a feeling, yes, an emotion. And so that instrument has got to enable you. So, and sometimes as you progress, you change. And so in which case that's when your instrument changes with you.
It does. And the disadvantage with the flute, I mean, if you look at Elton John when he plays the piano, you always see the Yamaha written on the piano. So there is this branding hitting you on the face. With the flute, there isn't. But you touched on it a few minutes ago and you said the most important thing is when you put your flute down.
And people always, come look. They always will come and look and see what it is that you're playing.
That's the hook.
Yeah. You know, once you look at building a brand, it becomes really very, very interesting. There are so many facets to building the brand, and one that everyone needs to actually have a sit down and think about, map out, plan, so that it works for them. And it's different for every single person.
Yeah, and I think we probably need to simplify it as well, don't they? Because sometimes you can look too deeply into something and become too paranoid.
So if you want to be successful, that's the first thing you have to do. You have to practice, practice, practice. But then if you want everyone else to know who you are and respond to all the work you've put in, you have to build your brand around all that work you've put in.
So can you build a brand, I'm coming here from a different perspective, but can you build a brand from when you're at music college? Do you bring in that process then?
I'd have thought so, because you've got to start thinking early on about what you want to do with your life and how you're going to do it. I think I have found in the last quite a few years that many students don't think about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They have their lessons, they practice, but they do it in a sort of bubble without thinking about the reality of finding a job or creating a niche in which they can work.
So fundamentally, you have to know yourself.
You have to know yourself, what you're good at, and that's what you can push.
So when did you know what you really wanted to do? In other words, it's great to have a dream, but sometimes dreams don't always end up in reality. And there is a positivity panacea, isn't there, where people say, just be positive. But ultimately you can be positive, but your level isn't necessarily going to get you where you're dreaming it goes. So and you're trying to find your brand, where do you find the realistic points? How do you be completely honest? Because we all want to be good. Obviously, you've got to feed back. But how do you... It's quite a hard area for your music student, isn't it?
It's very hard. And, of course, different stages of your life throw out different obstacles. Yeah.
Can you explain to me, obviously I know what a biography is, can you explain in detail the importance of what a biography is?
Well, it's your personal statement, so
it's you in a nutshell.
It's you in a nutshell, and you almost need two. You need one sort of general one that's maybe just on one page, maybe a big paragraph that encapsulates what it is that you're about, what is it that you do, why you do it, and why you want to do it. We talked in the previous podcast about this emotional connection. It's no good just saying, I'm very good at this, book me. You have to say why you're very good at what you do and what you feel about, how your passion for all things flute can be shown to other people.
So it's not a cold biographical sentence.
No, it's about how you interact with you will interact with your audience, or interact if it's for teach interact with your students, and you sort of create that image that encourages people to book you. And you want to look at other performers to see how they promote themselves, how they write their biographies, and how they promote their brand. And there's going to be good and bad, so you're going to learn from both. It's good to look at bad ones, so you know what not to write and what photographs not to take and all those sorts of things. So how you verbalise your ideals is crucial. Is it going to inspire your audience? And then promotion, general promotion, it can be in many different ways, can't it? You might have a brochure, or you might have a website. You might have a music blog. It might be live concerts. You might be uploading performances, because that obviously is another crucial area. Might be uploading on YouTube. And as I said, it's all to do with this interaction. Websites, they're like your calling card. So whereas when I started out, I literally did have a calling card. I had a business card. I remember the first time I went to the States that I printed off about 1,000 business cards, and I gave most of them out. So, I was just leaving them everywhere and throwing them out. And it would just be short and sweet to describe what I did and where they could get hold of me. But these days it's websites. So websites, you need to keep it up to date. It's great if you can add a blog so people can read about what you're doing on a regular basis. Look at other performers' websites for ideas. So the first thing you have to do is buy a domain name, which is very easy. It's not expensive. So websites are really important these days.
Because that is it's your face to the world, isn't it?
It's your face to the world, absolutely. And then you can direct people from there to go and listen to you on YouTube or on SoundCloud. Make sure that what you want people to see and what you want people to listen is something that you're happy about, proud about. And maybe someone else has looked at it to see that it's okay. So it's all very well putting up a live performance, but if you make a complete hash of something in the middle of it, then people are going to hear it.
Yes.
So you've got to be careful. Make sure that you read things before you post them and listen to things before you upload them. I find that a lot of people get a little bit lazy. They get lazy with the emails and they don't do anything else. So it's the emails, but they're not actually going and talking to people. So if you're doing a concert, make sure that you are interacting with the promoter, the people who are helping you, the people who are setting up the stage, setting up the hall, the person doing the lights, the person doing the front of house, that they get to know you as being, a nice sociable person who is nice to have around and who is asking if they can help, and you thank them for all the work they're doing, and so that they have a really good impression of you. So when you go, people are saying, "Oh, wasn't it lovely to have Joe Bloggs here today?" And they made it all so easy. So you can't be a prima donna. You can't arrive and find the dressing room and say, "I don't like this dressing room, I need a new one, and I'd like 3 litres of Buxton mineral water and a margarita pizza before I go on stage." You've got to be far more approachable and easygoing.
And that's exactly the same for social media, in that you can't just post a picture or a video link and then just wander off. If you're going to post that, if you really want to make your way up the ladder and become popular, you need to be approachable. You need to interact. And if you don't, your brand will suffer as a result of that. People will stop following you because you're unapproachable. So it's all to do with that. We're going back to that original point, aren't we? Communication, integrity.
Communication and integrity, absolutely. And I said earlier on, being honest and authentic. So, well, I hope that's been useful to people listening.
Well, it's certainly been useful for me because I've shut up for a change.
It's such an important part of performance, the way people see you. So, and there are so many factors involved. Maybe people could write in and say what they do to help build their own brand. If we've missed things out, which I'm sure we have done.
Well, yeah, because this isn't scripted. We just sit here and chat with a coffee.
Yep. So very interested to hear people's views. And as always, the email is flutepodcasts@gmail.com.
It is. One thing I haven't mentioned is consistency of branding. Consistency of branding and consistency of communication is important, certainly for a product that we do. And I'd imagine consistency is exactly the same for the musician.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You need to be definitely need to be consistent with the message that you're putting across. Mm-hmm. So that is also something to think about. So, well, thank you, John Paul. It's been really interesting for me to actually talk about this and actually think about all the things involved.
It's quite complicated building a brand, isn't it?
It is.
It should be simple.
Well, it's something that develops with you. As you develop, so your brand develops, and that's how you have to think about it.
Yep. So don't worry too much, but just focus on the core you, and then the rest should just sort of slip in like building blocks.
Yeah, absolutely. So many thanks.
Well, my pleasure, my lady.
Till next time.
Yep. You sure I can't pinch this one for Talking Flutes Extra?
No, this is definitely Talking Flutes.
And from Talking Flutes Extra, I would just like to say thank you. No, okay. Oh, you can have this one. I'm getting the eyes.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting me down, Claire.
You're very welcome.
Talking Flutes and Talking Flutes Extra are podcast productions by the Trevor James Flute Company. For more information, visit trevorjamesflutes.com.